Welcome to Fear and Greed, business news you can use today. A surge in jobs dashes hopes of any more rate cuts. The Liberal Party officially dumps net zero, and a Sydney fortune teller and her daughter charged over an alleged $70 million fraud scheme. Plus, a house in northern New South Wales sells for just $1, and the US penny minted for the very last time. It is Friday, the 14th of November 2025. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning. What an eclectic mix of stories we have today.
It is a real mixed bag, Sean. The main story this morning, hopes of a rate cut over the next 6 months have really nosedived after the unemployment rate fell to 4.3% last month, adding to evidence that inflation pressures remain in the Australian economy.
The drop in the jobless rate from 4.5% in September to 4.3% in October came after the number of employed people rose by 42,000, well above expectations. If you look behind that top line number, 55,000 more full-time employees, offset slightly by 13,000 part-time employees. The participation rate, which is the percentage of working age Australians in the labour force, held steady at a very high 67%. Now, the Reserve Bank has consistently warned that it felt the labour market remained tight. But with the unemployment rate considered the best broad measure of employment, the ABS data yesterday suggests, well, it did suggest things are easing. Yesterday's data suggests maybe not. The Reserve Bank has said fewer workers were being laid off, more people were voluntarily quitting their jobs to take up other employment, and there was less underemployment as part-timers secured more hours. Maybe they were right. In fact, on Wednesday, Deputy Governor Andrew Houser said the local labour market was very strong compared to other countries. They're probably running around this morning feeling very vindicated at the moment, the Reserve Bank.
Oh, yeah. The interesting thing here is financial markets, because it was better than expected, right? This number was a lot stronger than was expected. There was quite a reaction by financial markets.
Yeah, so bond markets reflect interest rate expectations. You know that, Michael, very well.
I do.
Before yesterday's data, the local market had priced in kind of about a 60-70% chance of a rate cut by the middle of next year. Following the release, that immediately fell to 30% or a little less than that. And we're talking about there may not be any more rate cuts, full stop.
That might be the end of it.
That might be the end of it. The local bourse took a dive on the news. The S&P ASX 200 fell 1% to a 10-week low immediately after the news. Now, it came back a bit, but the point with interest rates, lower interest rates helps earnings. So if we're not going to get lower interest rates, earnings won't be helped. Therefore, shares were sold off. The Aussie dollar jumped on the news, 65.60 US cents, basically in the short term. Interest rates matter for currencies. Now, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers was pretty upbeat about the whole thing. He said it was a very positive result, and Australia is one of the few countries around the world that has kept people in jobs in the face of global uncertainty. That 4.3% number is tracking close to the Reserve Bank's forecast now. Leading indicators of the jobs market suggest it is slowing, but the labour market is making it very tough for the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates again.
Okay. Let's have a look at politics now, Sean, because we said this was a mixed bag, and there is a lot we've got to get through. The coalition.
We're getting through the serious stuff up front, though, because it does start to get sillier.
There are some fascinating stories coming up after the break. The coalition would repeal Australia's near and long-term climate targets from legislation if it returns to government.
Opposition leader Susan Lee confirmed that the Liberal Party will abandon its policy commitment to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, joining coalition partner the Nationals. Senior Liberals, after a 3-hour meeting yesterday morning, agreed to remain in the Paris Agreement if elected, and would set interim emission reduction targets, but the Libs wouldn't commit Australia to any long-term aspiration to reach net zero. Yesterday, Lee said Australians deserve affordable energy and responsible emissions reduction, and the Liberal Party could do both without net zero commitments. The next step is for the Libs and the Nats to negotiate a shared position on climate change, much easier now that they both have dumped net zero. That's scheduled to occur over the weekend.
Australia's chance of hosting next year's COP meeting, Sean, appears somewhat remote after the Turkish president wrote to the to our Prime Minister, saying he will not back down from his country's bid to claim hosting rights for next year's UN Climate Summit.
Yeah, so Anthony Albanese said that President Erdogan had written to him to restate Turkey's desire to host the event, which typically attracts about 50,000 visitors to the host city, leaving the two countries at an impasse with just over a week left to resolve the issue. Now, Albanese had written to Erdogan twice in the last month in an attempt to strike a deal which could involve splitting hosting duties between the two countries. If an agreement can't be reached, neither country will host it. It'll end up being hosted by a German city.
Okay. That's the serious. Look, there are serious stories coming up afterwards, but there is a real mixed bag.
The first couple, they start going downhill.
Okay, we will take a quick break. Back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the corporate regulator has launched civil penalty proceedings against research house SQM Research, alleging that it published misleading favourable ratings for the Shield Master Fund and failed to meet required standards in its reporting.
What you need to know about this story is that the Shield Master Fund failed. This is really significant. ASIC's getting a bit antsy about research houses and ratings agencies. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, in its report on the private credit sector, the regulator had a swipe at ratings agencies, saying they had limited capacity for independent verification in the private credit sector. Mm-hmm. Now, it's suing SQM Research, one of the big research houses around town, claiming that in reports issued in October 2021, March 22 and October 22, it rated various Shield classes as 3 3/4 stars, favourable, without actually properly verifying information or addressing inconsistencies. ASIC alleges the firm misrepresented that it had a reasonable basis and exercised due care in giving the ratings to the Shield Master Fund. Approximately 5,800 investors relied on financial advisors who used SQM Research's report to recommend Shield. That's what ASIC doesn't like.
This story is not going away, is it?
No, it's really, really interesting that ASIC is getting aggressive on research houses and ratings agencies, particularly because so many of us rely on them when we think about where we're going to put our money.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, accounting software group Xero's after-tax profit rose 42% in the first half of its financial year. That's its strongest performance in years. Yet investors dumped the stock yesterday with its share price falling 9%.
Yes, investors weren't impressed with Xero's quality of earnings and were concerned about the pace of customer acquisitions. CEO Sukhinder Singh Cassidy said the core of Xero's success was its performance against a key industry benchmark, the so-called Rule of 40. Without getting too technical, the widely watched metrics as a healthy, growing SaaS company, software as a service company, should have revenue growth plus profit margin of more than 40%. Don't ask me to explain that one any further. Xero reported a Rule of 40 outcome of 44.5%. All that's fine. Investors didn't like it.
No.
9% sell-off.
Love that we promised that stories were going to get a bit sillier after the break. And so far, we have not lived up to the promise that we made, Sean.
Yep. It's coming, I promise.
Okay, that was Xero. The rest of the ASX yesterday, we did mention briefly the impact of the jobs data.
Dropped 1%, then finished 0.5% lower to 8,753 points. Broadly, the tech stocks and property groups sold off. Materials companies did best. ANZ fell 5%. It went ex-dividend though. NAB and Westpac were lower, CBA higher, but most of the action really was with the tech stocks.
Can we give a special shout out to Drone Shield?
Yes.
It has been a share market darling, really, this year. Not anymore, it seems.
Yeah, earlier this year.
Yeah, its share price tumbled 31% yesterday after the chair and chief executive both sold a significant amount of stock.
Yeah, so Chief Executive Oleg Vornik sold nearly 15 million shares, valued at about $50 million. Well, it was when he sold them, not anymore. Chairman Peter James sold $12.35 million worth of shares. Investors don't like it when management sell out. The 31% drop yesterday took the month-long drop, or a little bit over a month, to 66%.
Sean, this is both a serious story and it's quite extraordinary in the detail as well. A Sydney woman who claimed to be a fortune teller and feng shui master and her daughter as well, they've both been charged over an alleged $70 million fraud and money laundering scheme.
Police say the pair duped vulnerable clients into taking out large loans based on false predictions that they would soon meet a billionaire.
Right.
The woman allegedly pocketed the proceeds through a sophisticated network of fake companies and bank accounts. Officers seized luxury goods, gold bars and casino chips during raids at the pair's $13 million home. Now, it's part of an investigation into a broader syndicate by Strikeforce at Middleton, set up to investigate a criminal group allegedly using stolen identities to get loans for ghost cars, basically luxury cars that don't exist. The New South Wales Crime Commission has now frozen $75 million in assets linked to the syndicate. The head of the New South Wales Financial Crime Squad said, I quote, "What began as an investigation into fraudulent car financing has expanded into uncovering one of the most sophisticated financial crime syndicates I have seen in my career," end quote. So one of the most sophisticated financial crime syndicates he's seen is a feng shui master and fortune teller.
Fortune teller.
Duping $70 million, allegedly.
Just extraordinary. Finally, before we get to international news, Sean, a couple in northern New South Wales has paid $1 for a house located on the floodplains of Lismore, which is possibly the cheapest house sold in the last century.
Yeah, I made that last bit up. I mean, it could be the cheapest house sold ever. I'm sure houses have been given away, but $1.
Yeah, $1. Because occasionally you hear about kind of remote towns, particularly in kind of Queensland, that will sell houses for $1 or $5 or something, and they're just doing it as an effort to build up the population. But this is slightly different.
So 11 properties sold at the auction this week at the Murwillumbah RSL. You can pronounce that better than me. Murwillumbah. That's it. Murwillumbah RSL. 4 homes sold for $5, another for $200, and then this one for $1. Basically about $14,000 or $15,000 for the 11 homes in total. The young couple that bought the $200 house used to rent it. They went to the RSL to see what it would get and walked out owning it. Now, a little bit of a catch with this. It's part of the New South Wales government's buyback scheme for flood-affected housing. The government's purchased the homes and land and are selling the homes or the houses. So buyers, they've got to cut the house in half, load it on a truck, re-stump it on their own land. They probably need to glue it together or whatever you do when you cut a house in half. You've probably got renovation in there too. But basically, we're talking about...
you were going so well, and then your lack of knowledge when it comes to kind of building.
Yes.
It's like, do you buy house glue?
The re-stumping, I was really proud that I knew that too.
Oh, that sounded legit, but the gluing kind of,
So it probably costs, $100,000 plus renovation costs.
Yeah.
But that's better than what, $400,000 or $500,000 for a new home?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a pretty incredible story, and it comes out of kind of what was such an awful time with those floods up there. But now, hopefully, these couples can take these houses and build something new out of it.
Glue them together again.
Glue them back together again, Sean. Turning to international news now, President Donald Trump has signed a spending package to reopen the US government, a measure passed by the Republican-led House that ended the record 43-day shutdown.
The package extends funding for the federal government through to January 30 and includes full-year funding for the Agriculture Department, military construction and the legislative branch. The resolution of the standoff ensures paychecks for federal employees, including air traffic controllers, and sends hundreds of thousands of furloughed government workers back to the job. But it postponed until later this year the central political fight: how to address the expiration of hefty healthcare subsidies that are set to be cut off for millions of households.
Finally, Sean, feels like the end of an era.
It does. I like that.
Yeah. The very last penny in the US, worth 1 cent, has been minted after President Donald Trump ordered the coin discontinued earlier this year.
Yeah, so it will still be legal tender, but just won't be manufactured anymore. Do you know how many pennies are in circulation?
Quite a few. Many.
300 billion.
Billion with a B.
Yeah. So that would be $3 billion
Yep.
worth of pennies. That'd be very heavy.
Yes. Yes, it would. Do you know what they're made of?
No.
Zinc and copper.
Well, I was going to say copper. Like they lose, I'm going to get it wrong, I think it's like 80 million a year making them. So
Really?
Yeah, like minting them.
There you go.
So I would imagine zinc and copper are probably worth quite a bit more than what they used to be.
Okay.
I mean, there's a big issue for retailers.
Oh, you mean they lose the value because of the value of the materials going into it? I thought you meant they physically lost them. Oh, like, okay,
Right. No.
like down the back of the couch, that kind of thing. Possible as well.
It is possible. No. The minting of them is a loss-making operation. A lot of discussion. We had this in Australia many years ago. I can vaguely remember when we dropped
the 1 and 2 cent coins. Yeah.
So what do you get charged if it's, $52.53? Well, it's actually 55 cents. They're having that argument in the US at the moment. Basically, retailers want Congress to authorise rounding up prices to override state and local laws that don't allow it. Did you know the last time the US discontinued a currency? 1867, when the half cent was discontinued. I never realised there was a half cent.
No. I mean, that was a little bit before my time.
Even my time.
Quick pop quiz for you.
Yeah.
The Australian 1 and 2 cent coins, what were the animals on them?
Wombat?
No.
A echidna?
No.
Kangaroo? Koala?
No. Stop. The 1 cent coin was the feather-tailed glider.
Right.
And the frill-necked lizard on the 2 cent. You remember that one?
Yes, I do. I do remember it.
Anyway.
Anyone that could see us would be seeing Michael's hands
doing the frill-neck
lizard thing.
Like that, yeah. Anyway, we might have to post that video on
I think so.
Our Instagram. Definitely. It's not a LinkedIn thing, that's not, but it may be an Instagram. Okay, up next is Fear and Greed Q&A. Today you're speaking with Annie Harrison from Eubank, which is a great supporter of the podcast.
It's a great kind of 101 on what to think about if you're getting a home loan. So in many ways it's for first home buyers or people who just want to get into the market and haven't done it for a while.
Yeah.
Just the really simple things you have to consider when taking out a home loan.
Yeah. Annie was great, wasn't she?
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, really good chat. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where the daily newsletter lives. If you want to sign up, head along to the website or click on the link in the show notes and you'll get it in your inbox every morning by 6 a.m. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 14th of November, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.